Hello everyone, and welcome to the final video in our JavaScript for Beginners tutorial series. Now, this video is not really going to be like the other ones in regards of I'm not going to be doing any coding. I'm mainly going to be recounting a little bit of what we learned, what you can do now, and what is next, really. Like the title, what do you do after finishing this series? So, I think the best way to start explaining that is with kind of explaining what JavaScript is used for in programming. Now, most often, you use JavaScript as part of a web development, as part of web development in general, whether it be on the back end or front end, and I'll explain what those mean in a second. Now, one of the common pathways is the front end, and what front end means generally is it's what users see on a website. Now, a front end developer is what, creates the buttons, the text, the coloring, the positioning, and then makes some of the buttons they kind of wire up the buttons a little bit to the functionality and of the site itself. Now, backend developers use JavaScript and or other languages to create these web servers. And what web servers do is they do everything that the front end doesn't. They kind of serve the page, they send, they interact with the user's web browser. On YouTube, for example, they serve your YouTube videos. On Uber, the web server connects users and drivers. In Google Maps, the web server or the backend server kind of is responsible for routing you, finding the best way to get from point A to point B. So those are the two main aspects of web development / it's mostly web development, but also can encompass mobile development, like iOS and Android, is front end and back end. And then there's a middle ground kind of called full stack, which is a little bit of both. Now, the two main pathways you can take after learning JavaScript here are you can either do my next video series, which I'll be actually starting development or starting recording tomorrow. It is going to be Intro to Web Development. And that series is going to kind of go over HTML and CSS, which are two other programming languages that are most commonly used for creating websites. Now, HTML is used for rendering buttons, text, checkboxes, images, and then CSS is responsible for positioning those things, put that here, make this text this color, make it this big, stuff like that. Those two languages kind of play together. And then JavaScript comes in and makes it so that when you click this button, it'll log you in. When you type in this, it'll do a search. When you when you hit enter, it'll ask, how do you get from point A to point B? That's what JavaScript does. It's kind of like the bridge between the backend and the front end. And then also it can be used to create the backend, which handles logging you in, which handles finding your route, which handles everything heavy lifting about programming. So those are the two main pathways you can go after learning this JavaScript series. And like I said, I'll be making an Introduction to Web Development tutorial series after this one that kind of goes into that HTML and CSS of creating websites. In addition, after that, I will be creating another series called Node.js Programming, which will be basically an introduction to creating those web servers that can do a variety of things. They can, they can handle login, they can handle creating bots, anything really. Anything on the back end. And then from there, I will be kind of going even deeper into a more professional grade of programming. So at least in theory, if you can go through JavaScript, and then go through Intro to Web Development, and then maybe intermediate JavaScript, and then React development, which will be another tutorial series after, then you will have the knowledge to be a professional front-end developer. Whereas if you went to JavaScript, intermediate JavaScript, and then did Node.js, and then web servers, and then did databases, for example, you would have the skills to become a professional backend developer. And that's kind of what I want to kind of show. Because at least in my personal job, I am what's called a full stack developer, meaning I do both front end and back end. So I kind of possess at least a decent level of that knowledge to actually be able to teach you the basics of the knowledge that you'll need to get a professional job being a web developer. And then also, as a full stack developer, I actually can use another library called React Native, which is based on the front end React, and that lets me create mobile apps and stuff like that. So my hope is that through future tutorial series, you can use the knowledge that you've gained here as a jumping off point to really expand your programming knowledge to build whatever you want. Whether it does be, or whether it is websites or servers, you can also take the knowledge that you've learned here and apply it to you've at least learned the fundamentals of programming in general. So you can take that and go into C and C++ and learn to build like robots or embedded systems or like stuff like that. Or you could take it into JavaScript or into Java or C# and learn how to create general applications, or Python, same thing. You can take it into Go or Rust or like, one of the heavier backend languages. Like you can really take what you've learned in this series and take it in many different directions from here. And hopefully I will be able to create a guide at some point kind of pointing you in the right direction, because after this series there really is any other direction you can go to kind of like propel yourself towards one discipline of software engineering. So that was pretty much it for this video. Like I said again, the next tutorial series that I will be starting to film tomorrow will be the introduction to web development, which will cover HTML and CSS. So if you missed the previous videos in this playlist or in this series, go ahead and check out the playlist linked in the description. I'll be starting, like I said, my new tutorial series tomorrow. If you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Subscribe and hit the bell icons for whenever I upload new videos. And then thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next series.